listening to MMA Think Tank with Jay and Mike.
Welcome to the MMA Think Tank. I'm your host, Jay. Along with me, as usual, is my co-host, Mike. Mike, we just wrapped up UFC 191, John Dodson versus Demetrious Johnson 2. Their first fight was excellent, and I thought this fight was even more, well, excellent. What did you feel?
I don't know if I'd say this one was more excellent than the first one when it came down to the guys fighting. The first one was a little more competitive, but look, Mighty Mouse Johnson is far and away the best guy in that division, and he proved it tonight. I was a little worried after the first two rounds because it seemed kind of ho-hum. These guys kind of matched up well against each other, but for people who haven't watched the fight already, spoiler alert, in the third round, Mighty Mouse started pulling away with strikes. Dodson, he did well early on, stopping takedowns and things like that. But Mighty Mouse is just too much for him, Jay.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Demetrious Johnson is pound for pound. I believe, my opinion, he's pound for pound the best fighter. He's just so amazing to watch. And to me, the things he did tonight just solidified my beliefs. The guy made Dodson actually look slow at times. And, Dodson's got that speed. I never thought I'd say that, but he did. And he tired out Dodson as well in the third. Just an amazing fight.
Yeah, I'll go with – I won't probably agree with you with pound for pound number one. I'll still go John Jones, but we'll see what happens if he comes back and how good it is. But, I mean, look, there's no way that Demetrious Johnson isn't number 1 or 2 or 3. Jay, we've talked before about if you don't think Johnson is top 3, there's probably something wrong with you. The way this guy has run through the division, I know in the beginning he had a lot of decisions, but he's knocking guys out. And I'm not going to fault him for having a decision against John Dodson both times. I mean, they're just that great fighters. You're going to have decisions.
Yeah, definitely. So, Demetrious Johnson, to me, people talking about the popularity contest and stuff, how he's not popular and he's not selling many pay-per-views or whatnot. People need to jump on board. It doesn't matter if a guy doesn't run his mouth for a fight. Watch this guy fight. He is amazing. He is the epitome of everything that is mixed martial arts, in my opinion. He's just amazing. Everything he does is just fantastic.
Yeah, everything that he does is what you can do in the sport, and these guys don't get tired. Well, I said these guys, meaning flyweights, but John Dodson did get tired tonight, but he's fighting one of the best pound for pound. And, I did give John Dodson the second round.
I
thought that was a good round for Dodson. But overall, if you guys haven't seen the fight yet, it's so worth the watch. I think I might have already said this, but after the first two rounds, I was kind of a little worried that we're going to have a stinker the way Frank Mir and Andrei Arlovski was. We'll get to that soon, I'm sure. But it wasn't a stinker. It's just these guys, they're iron sharpens iron, and, it went from there.
Yeah, you know what, Mike? It's the fact that these two guys are let's face it, they're the fastest in the division. They're the most powerful in the division. John Dodson certainly is. We saw a lot of that power tonight. It looked as if that he was the stronger guy in that octagon, but he just couldn't deal with the speed of Demetrious Johnson. It looks to me like Demetrious Johnson was just a step above tonight. At the beginning, like you said, the first two rounds, even the first, I'll go 2.5 rounds. It looked as if it could have went either way. But by the end of that third round, Demetrious pulled away, started to make Dodson look slow, and, came away with that win. But what really impressed me and solidified my pound-for-pound ranking here is the fact that Demetrious Johnson was throwing things like a double head kick. Like, he threw his right leg to the head of Dodson, and immediately, as soon as the foot touched the canvas, he threw his left leg to the head, and then followed up with a combo with his hands. Amazing. Like, nobody else could do that. No other division, that is, could do that, but these flyweights.
Well, I've maybe seen Uriah Faber do something like that once or twice, but not repeatedly.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. These guys, especially Demetrious Johnson, he can do that stuff, and then he's back out like a ghost, as Joe Rogan says. And I'm going to touch on something you just said about, being Dodson being stronger. You know what, man? Look at the faces at the end of the fight.
Yeah.
And you don't you're not supposed to look at faces and damage if it's a close fight. But I think when it's a fight that has been, with Dodson tapering off after the second round, it showed here how dominant the win was for Mighty Mouse. Dodson's face was all busted up, and Mighty Mouse looked like he just got out of the shower, man. Yeah. I mean, that's what he looked like.
Yeah, it's definitely a testament to his speed and his ability to get away from Dodson striking. And, he just tagged Dodson a lot more than he got tagged. That's where that face came from. And he said it at the end. Look how sexy he was at the end. I thought that was pretty funny. But I was glad to see the sportsmanship at the end too. Him telling Dodson, it's cool. Even though Dodson talked a lot of crap, he said, it's cool. Everything's good. They're good, and wished him well.
He used a lot. I'll say Dodson. Dodson used a lot of words like, I'm going to kill him, or this douche, and all this other stuff. Stuff that, man, you don't need to say that stuff. Because I don't want the people to be talking like that in the sports game. I'm not talking about using naughty words or anything, but respect the guy you're fighting. And, you're right. Mighty Mouse took it and won the fight, showed he's better. And I like Mighty Mouse. I think the guy... And the UFC does too, Jay, because let's think about it. He was the main event of a pay-per-view right now. They felt that we're going to push this guy finally, and we're going to give him a shot. And hopefully people didn't tune away after the Frank Mir fight. But, just for me to get one of my last thoughts on the fight, bring on Henry Cejudo if he beats Jussier Formiga. Because really, I don't care about seeing Mighty Mouse fight other people in this division. I'll watch it like Ronda Rousey and other people that are going to demolish people.
Yeah.
So I do like to watch. I do like to watch Mighty Mouse fight, but Cejudo's undefeated, gold medal wrestler. If he beats Formiga, that's the last guy really that I think is a threat. Maybe I should just say that, Jay. That's the last threat in his division. After that, let's see what happens.
Yeah, I agree. And to Dodson's credit about all the crap talking and stuff, the stuff that he was saying, to his credit, I will say in the first fight, he did give Demetrius a run for his money. He knocked Demetrius down a couple times with some hard shots. So, I understand that kind of talk he was giving, and he was trying to hype up a fight. And, so I give people a pass when they talk up a fight and stuff. But as far as Demetrius Johnson goes, like I said, the guy's an amazing fighter. More people should jump on that bandwagon and watch him fight. The guy's just fantastic. And you're exactly right about hoping that people stuck around after that fight from Mir and Arlovsky. Boy, what a stinker that was. And we could jump right into that right now. Let's talk Arlovsky-Mir.
Well, Jay, first, how did you score it? I scored it for Mir, actually. I scored Mir 29-28.
I scored it 29-28 for Arlovsky. I gave him I think I gave Frank Mir the second round. I gave Arlovsky the first and third. Okay, to quote Empire Strikes Back, I'll just say, control, you must learn control. And that's basically all that happened in this fight. The guys controlled each other. There wasn't a lot of great striking in it. So I gave Mir the first round. I gave him the second round. I gave Arlovsky the third. But, Mir had this fight, I thought, in the bag in the second round when he took him down. He had the size advantage. I thought he was going to grab the arm and do a Kimura or something like that, something that he took out Big Nog, a few years ago. So, but he just didn't do much. He threw a couple elbows to the chest and to the stomach, and they just laid there. And then, of course, they separated him. And a lot of this fight was them being separated, Jay. And it just go ahead and say something else about it if you got anything left. I got one last thing to say, but I don't want to, keep talking about it if you got more today. With Mir coming into the cage looking like he did, there was something odd about his look tonight, and I noticed it right away. He looked a lot flabbier than normal. His arms were a lot smaller, and his belly a lot bigger. And I don't know what was going on there. I know I heard Joe talk about how he wanted to put on the weight and be that heavier guy once he got Arlovsky to the ground. But let's face it, he did nothing when he got Arlovsky to the ground, basically laid on him. And, they were stood up, and rightfully so. But as far as the way he looked terrible. It was the worst looking Frank Mir I've ever seen. I don't know what's going on there. I don't want to speculate, But there's something definitely that was wrong with him tonight. And to both of them, I say they just looked their age tonight. They really did.
Yeah, with Frank Mir, he goes up and down, depending on who he's fighting. So I understood that why he was probably going up for this, because I thought, he'd have the strength and the mass for the grappling to take on the lower, excuse me, not the lower the guy, but the lighter guy.
Yeah.
And it looked to almost happen in the second round. So I think that's why he did that. But he did have a flabbier stomach. So even usually when he's big, he's not, super cut, but he's not as flabby as it was today, Jay. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think it's age, but it also could be, I guess it's age or he got an injury. Maybe we'll find out later.
Maybe, but even his arms were a bit flabby, and it just didn't look right. His arms the muscle was gone, and it just didn't look right. In any case, it was a stinker of a fight. So if you want to wrap this up with any last words, go ahead and wrap this up, because I'm really done talking about it. Yeah,
this for all you hardcore fans, old timers out there. Was this like worse than Andrei Arlovsky, Tim Sylvia 3? I don't know, because that fight sucked also, and I don't get angry too much on the show, but that fight was horrible, and this fight was horrible. Like Jay said, neither of these guys looked good; they looked old, and something I wrote down, and I don't even have to look at it because it's in my brain. Somewhere Fabricio Verdum is not shaking in his boots. He's not worried about either of these guys.
Yeah.
And, I'm not saying we were sold a tainted bill of goods in this fight, because things are going to happen. But Andrei Arlovsky is not the answer. Frank Mir for sure isn't the answer. And I'm not saying don't watch these guys anymore. I'm just saying, put them aside. That's all.
No. As soon as they walked into the cage, despite the way Frank Mir looked, there was that nostalgic feeling you got seeing these two, old school UFC fighters getting in that cage once again to fight and on the cusp of a title shot. Now, I think I texted you this too. I said, not even Cain Velasquez would lose to these two.
Yeah.
The way they look tonight. I think he would run through them. And it's sad, because we do need a better heavyweight division. We need more guys in there, and we're not getting it at this point. Not with these two.
Well, that's the. Sorry. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, but I'm done with this fight. I really am. It's
okay. Yeah, I'll just go ahead and just say that's the problem with the heavyweight division. You've got a guy in Frank Mir he had a 4-fight losing streak. Then he got the 2 wins, and if he would have won tonight, which I thought he should have, even though it was a close fight, he might be fighting for a title after losing 4 and then winning 3. And that tells you that we still need more blood at heavyweight. And Jay, that's all I've got as well. I agree. I don't think we should talk about it anymore.
Yeah, definitely not. Who do you want to jump to next, Mike?
Let's go ahead on the other side of what's not exciting to exciting, which is Anthony Johnson.
Yes.
Jay, we're big fans of Anthony Johnson. He came in and did his thing. Why don't you go ahead first, Jay? What you think?
Well, as I've told you before, Mike, I think that Anthony Johnson, in my opinion, he has the heaviest hands in the division. And he showed that tonight. He displayed that. Coming in, I think you mentioned to me too that he looked bigger to you.
In the chest mostly.
Yeah, he looked the same to me, but I could go with that. Maybe he is a little bigger. Maybe he put on more muscle. I don't know, but he looked great tonight, knocking out Jimmy Manuwa, and I knew that was going to happen. Didn't know exactly when it was going to happen, but we saw it coming.
Yeah, it was a second round knockout really early on. The first round, they threw a couple of strikes at each other, and then Johnson did something I thought he might do, which is try to take him down because he's the better wrestler. And, he threw some punches on him there, but he was able to get up. Manuwa was able to get up. So, it wasn't a close round. It was Johnson winning the round for sure. And then round 2, it's like he had no more time for this fool, basically. He just walked out and just landed the right hand and sit on top of him and just throw like one more bomb, I think, Jay, and that was all she wrote.
Yeah, I was pretty, surprised that Anthony Johnson even took Manuwa down. I wasn't expecting that at all. I thought he was
a slam to boot, a slam.
Yeah, I thought he was just going to stand up and trade, and I thought it was going to be a stand-up war, which most of it was, but the takedown was a surprise to me. But no surprise here about the fight, the outcome of the fight. Anthony Johnson's just the better fighter, and I knew he was.
Yeah, what do you think with Manawa though? You know, he came in highly touted out of England. He wasn't undefeated, I believe. No, he wasn't undefeated when he came into the UFC. He lost to Gustafsson, and now he's lost to Anthony Johnson. So he's losing to the big names. Jay, do you think he's going to be one of those guys that they can put on fight night cards and he'll beat lesser known guys or maybe B-level guys, but just won't beat the big guys? What do you think?
I don't know, because he lost to two guys that are great.
Right.
They're fantastic fighters. If you look back at his record, you would see that, you know, he hasn't won against guys that are big names.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
you know what I'm
where
saying?
we put him?
Like, so, I mean, just looking at his career and looking at the fights before tonight, just saying, oh, his only loss was to Gustafsson isn't really saying much when you look at his total career. He hasn't fought many good people. That's why I thought, that's why I pretty much knew Anthony Johnson was going to run through him, because Jimmy Manawa hasn't fought anybody.
Yeah, and he's pretty much just a striker. But he did, you know, he's lost to the current number one contender and the previous number one contender. So I think we give him some more time, see how he does against, you know, maybe like, I would say Ryan Bader, but he's on a run, Jay. You know, I'm trying to think of a name that's decent enough that would give him a name value, but maybe they just give him two guys, you know, in the top 15 and then move him on again. That's what I'm going to say with Jimmy Manawa.
Yeah, I'm not saying the guy can't get any better than he is now.
Right.
It's just that, unfortunately for him, he was thrown to the wolves tonight, and he was thrown to the wolves when he fought Gustafsson.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the fighters he's fought right before Gustafsson, it's people I don't even know. I've never heard of these people. And,
yeah,
you know, being thrust upon, you know, the limelight, so to speak, and being on this big stage where he's fighting against Gustafsson and now Johnson, come on, like, give the guy a break is what I say.
Yeah, and that's why I think you give him to, some, you know,
Yeah, I agree.
You know, top 15 or something. But Anthony Johnson, Jay, I mean, he's still up there now, right? I mean, he lost to Daniel Cormier. No big slouch there. It's similar to Manawa, except for he's beaten good guys, but he's lost to the top guys.
Yeah, and I heard a lot of arguments. I saw a lot of videos of guys talking about their predictions and read a lot of articles. And some guys were saying that Manawa is hungrier. You know, he's going to be he's got everything to lose here, or everything to gain here, and Johnson doesn't really have much more to gain because he's already been there fighting for the title, which I thought was just ridiculous. And I've read that on a couple of different articles, and to me, it's like, no, Johnson is going to be the hungrier guy here because he was just there, got a taste of it, and got put back down. He's going to run through Manawa because of that.
Well, see, I hear what you're saying, but I just disagree with it entirely. Not what you said, but what they're saying.
Yeah.
Because that only comes into play, the whole he's hungrier or whatever. That only comes into it when when two guys, or two ladies, of course, are close in skills.
Yeah.
And, you know, it doesn't matter how hungry somebody is if someone's outclassed. And Johnson, he outclasses Manawa in just about every point of the fighting.
Yeah.
So, you know, I tend to look at that and just kind of, you know.
Yeah, I just scoffed at it. I scoffed at it. It's one of those things where, you know, when you see a Facebook post where it says, you know, Uriah and, you know,
Frankie Sands.
Uriah and, you know, Frankie Edgar are going to be put on a card or something. People will just look at that on face value and think, oh, Uriah's fighting Frankie Edgar.
Oh,
and then they'll comment on that and say, oh, Edgar's going to get whooped, or Uriah's going to get whooped by Edgar. It's like, dude, did you really even read the article? It's those kind of shrug your shoulder moments where you're like,
it was Uriah and Holloway are going to be on 194, and so they didn't even read it. That was it.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
Holloway versus Uriah. Yeah. That's what people were putting together. No, it was just mentioning that both fighters were going to be on 194. Guys, calm down. That's what it was, Mike. Anyway, let's go on to, you spoke of the ladies there. Let's go on to the ladies fight. Tonight we had Paige Van Zandt versus Alex Chambers. And Mike, I got to tell you, I was never a big fan of Van Zandt, as you know. I mean, I respected her game somewhat, but, you know, I was never in her camp, so to speak, until tonight. I think she did excellent. She looked great.
Yeah, and I agree. I didn't see her first fight live in the UFC, where she won it by submission, I believe. It could have been strikes on the ground. But I did see her second fight live against Felice Herrig, and she dominated Felice Herrig. And that was the first real fight I saw live. And I started to fall in love with her there. And I've met her. She's a really nice young lady. Took pictures with all the fans and stuff. And you know what? This fight, she just ran through, Alex Chambers. And I realize Alex Chambers is kind of on the older side. She's 36 years old. But, I mean, just from the beginning, there's lots of clinch work, and the Muay Thai plum was being used just amazingly by Van Zandt. And, the first round wasn't a straight 10-8 round or anything like that, but she was in control. And then after that, Jay, it was just she took over in the second round. And, the armbar at the end of the third round, just good stuff.
Chambers had nothing for her, bottom line.
Right.
She had nothing for her.
Yeah.
And the age thing, I don't know if that played a factor in it. I just think Van Zandt was just the better fighter. Van Zandt is the real deal. I mean, she's not just a pretty face. She can fight.
Yeah.
She can fight. And she's got cardio for days. You can tell. As all those Team Alpha Male, personnel, I should say personnel now, because I can't say guys.
Right.
because she's part of them. But man, she looked good tonight in every way. She looked great. And
I agree.
she was an awesome fighter tonight, and she showed up. But, one thing I want to touch on, Mike, is the fact that, Joe Rogan said this too. He talked about how Jędrzejczyk is just on another level from these other strawweights. And yes, I believe that to a degree. I think you and I spoke about the only wrench in that is you got Claudia Gadelha.
Yep.
Claudia Gadelha is I don't know. I'd say she's right there with Johanna.
Close first fight. So
yeah, close first fight. But yeah, definitely. Yeah, but Claudia Gadelha, she's definitely up there with Johanna. I'm not saying that Paige Van Zandt can never get there. I'm just saying that she's definitely not there now on that level. But she's a great fighter right now. I think she's fun to watch.
Yeah, she's relentless in her fights, and that's something she can do right now for sure. She's still young. I hope they give her some more time and not give her a title shot, after another win. But if they do, that's just how the cookie crumbles right now with these divisions. They're young, they're small, and and these ladies, when I say guys, I mean just everybody. They're gonna have to fight, quicker. They're not gonna grow as easy as they do with the men, for instance. So I'm excited to see that, and I would pick Gadelha as maybe the second best, like you said, by far, or even 1A, 1B, if you want to say that. Yeah. So yeah, we've got some prospects, and Van Zandt's one of them.
She's young, and also she's a crowd pleaser. I've noticed in every one of her UFC fights so far, the crowd loves her. They get behind her all the time, which is awesome to see. But it's also pretty amazing because it seems like the women's divisions are actually getting a lot of love now.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something, what it is. She's a really cute young woman. And I don't mean she's just attractive because she is, but she wants to be there. She's smiling, Jay. And, she loves what she does. And something really quick, I know every so often we talk about PEDs and things like that. And she spoke about how she knows some of the women out there are on them. And she talks about herself and Misha Tate and a few others that when you look at their bodies, you can tell they're not on PEDs. And that's something I think that people like about her as well. She doesn't look overly buff, whether you want to call that man-like or whether you want to call that just overly buff. She gets in there and she beats these girls on technique, and she's great.
Yeah, technique and just total willpower and just, tenacity that she has. It's amazing. And she's only going to get better, like you said. Now, let's go ahead and move on. What fight do you want to talk about next?
Well, the last fight we haven't talked about yet for the main card of UFC 191 is Corey Anderson, tough winner. He fought Jan Blachowicz, who is a former Muay Thai champ. He's got a couple of fights in the UFC. Corey Anderson's a tough winner. He's got a few fights. But I'm not even going to get too much into this fight, Jay, and just read the scores for you. And I agree with these first two scores, which was Corey Anderson wins 30-25, 30-25, and 29-26. Corey Anderson just picked up Blachowicz, threw him down, and stayed on top of him almost the whole fight. There was some striking as well on their feet, but it was just a mauling by Anderson. Jay.
Yeah, it was definitely the Anderson show. That's what it was. There was definitely no real fight from Blankowitz. Yeah, there was definitely no fight from him. It was all Anderson, and you know what? There's not much more to say about that. Once you read those scores and you talk about how he was ragdolled, it was a boring fight to me because it was so one-sided.
I was just happy they gave 2 rounds 10-8 to Anderson because sometimes 10-8s don't get called as often as they should.
Yeah, exactly. You know what, Mike? There's another fight I wanted to touch on in the prelims. I wanted to talk about Ross Pearson versus Paul Felder.
Yeah.
Paul Felder's back after 6 weeks of being in action. That war he fought against, of course, Barboza. He's back. He was back tonight, and he fought Ross Pearson, and it was a great fight. I liked the back and forth.
Well, first of all, I liked seeing Pearson back at 155, and me in all full, knowledge coming up right now. I didn't know he went back to. I forgot he went back to 155. He's been at 145 for a couple of fights, and part of it may be because of the weight cut, like we were talking about. And I agree with it. And I think Pearson looked decent at 155. I scored the fight for Felder. Now it was a split decision for Pearson, and it wasn't a robbery by any means. No. But for me, for the round 1, I gave it to Pearson. He got the takedown and position. After that, though, the other 2 rounds were all pretty much striking. Those 2 rounds were close, so it could have went either way. But I thought Felder had octagon control through those other 2 rounds a lot, because for me, when there's close striking, close grappling, I look at who's pushing the fight, who's got the other fighter closer to the fence. And that's the only reason I gave Paul Felder those 2 rounds. But my last thing to say on that, Jay, is I really liked the interview that Joe Rogan did there. I thought that was really cool to kind of talk to both of them. As you could tell, Paul Felder was really bummed that he didn't get the win. And I thought it was just good stuff on Joe. Yeah,
it was. And also, like you said, it could have went either way. I mean, for me, it was too hard to judge. It was that close. Like those last 2 rounds, I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell you. I just threw my hands up in the air and literally said I could go either way. And you know what? That's the scores reflected that with the split decision. Even the judges had a hard time with that, obviously. But Paul Felder, pick your head up, man. You're an awesome fighter. I like watching you, and you're definitely in there. You're in the mix, man. So that's what I would say to Paul.
Yeah, so you thought this fight was better than the last one he had against Barboza?
Yeah. You know what? Watching that last fight against Barboza, we talked about this before, but
yeah.
He was coming in a lot without throwing much. This fight, he was actually throwing a lot, and he did a great job. And against Ross Pearson is a guy who's a great striker. People, you can't take that away from Ross. Ross, we know he's a great striker. So it was a great fight.
This was one of those fights where he's fighting another veteran in Ross Pearson, and how is it going to go? And I picked Felder. I picked him easily to win this fight by knockout, and he didn't get it done. So I thought he looked better though in this fight. I agree with you, Jay. So I'm still down to watch the Irish Dragon, but seeing him sit there against the fence or against the cage at the end, I think he's just got to get up and just say, you know what, this is what's going to happen early on in a young guy's career, and he's going to get better. So hopefully, he's not too down and out.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll be seeing Paul Felder again.
Jay, there's 2 other fights I want to talk about real quick on the prelims. I wasn't worried too much about the other prelims. I thought we'd just have the Felder fight to really be something. But big props to Raquel Pennington with a rear naked choke over Jessica Andrade with 2 seconds left in the second round. I mean, Pennington was 5-6 coming into the fight. Both girls brought it in that fight. It was a great fight. So if you guys haven't seen that yet, look that up or try and catch it on Fox Sports 2. They usually replay the prelims on Fox Sports 2. The other fight, also in the prelims, John Lineker and Francisco Rivera, they transformed into Rock'em Sock'em Robots a minute into their fight. I mean, Lineker finally finished the barrage with a guillotine choke over a hurt and tired Rivera. But, man, Lineker came into the fight as a ranked number 8 flyweight, and this is his bantamweight debut, Jay. If Lineker looks this good as a previous flyweight, the bantamweight division just got even better. Props
to Pennington, because I kind of started to count Pennington out after all those losses. And I just saw her like the wind in her sails just going, just not there anymore. And to see her win like that, man, props to her.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, like we talked about earlier, the ladies right now, this is such the division is so young. And I don't mean young in age. I mean just so young. And, you know, this is going to happen. You're going to have guys that are going to be 500, guys that have maybe a losing record. But if you let them keep them around, let them grow, let them learn, you know, who knows, maybe she'll end up, you know, having a 10-5 record soon enough.
But overall, Mike, I thought UFC 191 was a great card, with the exception of that stinker fight that we had in Arlovsky versus Muir. Other than that, it was a great card. Yeah,
it was a really good kickoff, I think, to the rest of this final quarter of the year. We've got some great fights we'll talk about later on.
Do we have some great fights? We've got some amazing fights coming up. But you know what? That Demetrius Johnson fight just totally washed away that Frank Mir-Arlovsky fight for me. So I'm riding a high tonight. It was a great night of fights, so I'm happy.
Yeah, solid. You know, Jay, we won't have a UFC card for a while, probably, I think the 25th. It's a UFC Japan card. But we do have a couple of other MMA promotions coming up big. We've got World Series of Fighting 23, Gaethje versus Palomino 2. That's going to be Friday on the 18th. And, you know, their first fight was a really exciting fight. It was so good they decided to go ahead and just do an immediate rematch. Justin Gaethje won this fight in the third round with a TKO. He just battered Palomino's legs, you know, forced him. He just fell over and threw a couple punches on top, and the ref stopped it. But that's not really the main part of that fight. These guys were just throwing haymakers. They were up against the fence, clinching. There was no grappling, I'm not going to lie. But it was a great fight. So when you have such a division that's kind of light at the time as WSOF's lightweight division, you know, I understand why they're doing the immediate rematch. So I'm excited about that. Also on that card is going to be the middleweight champ. David Brandt is fighting Terry Holder for the inaugural WSOF light heavyweight title. So they're finally going to have a light heavyweight title in the WSOF. So they are still that young, Jay. So I'm excited about that. That's going to be, again, on NBC Sports Channel.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Justin Gaethje is an awesome fighter. So that'll definitely be one to watch, guys.
Yeah, and I'm picking him to win here. I'm picking him to win big.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah, this is the last fight, really, of this, what I'm going to call the beginning of the WSOF, you know, era for him, because now there's so many killers that have signed. Jason High has signed, you know, Mike Ritchie has signed. All these guys have been signing, which is great.
Yeah, I've said it before. WSOF is looking a lot better than Bellator in terms of talent. I really think that they're coming up.
Well, you know, speaking of Bellator, Jay, it's a great segue from you. Bellator 142, it's titled Dynamite 1. That's going to be the next day on Saturday, and I believe that's going to be the 19th. It's a really good card. I'm looking forward to it because I've become a very big Liam McGeary fan. He's going to be defending his 205 title against Tito Ortiz. I'm going to just easily say it. He's going to knock out Tito Ortiz.
I hope so.
And send him probably packing. Josh Thompson's first fight. I'm sorry, Jay, go ahead.
I just said I hope so again. I'm not a Tito fan. I'm just not a Tito fan.
He'll just complain about it with his back, or look at my eyeball, or all that stuff he always talks about.
Yeah, I came in with a broken arm. Yeah, right. Something weird.
But he fights for the fans, Jay. So this is also Josh Thompson's first Bellator fight. He's going to be fighting Mike Bronzoulis.
Go Josh. Go Josh.
Yeah, you know, this is going to be his third. I can't say his third promotion. He's fought various places, but he's going to have fought now in all three of the major promotions now: UFC, Strikeforce, and now back with Scott Coker in Bellator. So, but one of the other big things going on tonight is kind of a back in history type of thing, a UFC 1 through 10 type of thing. We've got another tournament, a one-night four-man light heavyweight tournament with Kingbo versus Linton Vassell, Phil Davis versus Emmanuel Newton. Those guys will fight each other, and after that, the winners will fight each other. And whoever wins that night, then they're going to take on the winner of Liam McGeary and Tito Ortiz, but of course at a later date. In case those guys get hurt and they can't continue on that night. I'm talking about the tournament guys, of course. There's also Francis Carmont who has been in the UFC for a while. He's fighting Felipe Lins in the alternate belt, so one of those guys will step in. So you've got, I believe, 2 rounds is going to be the first fight in the tournament, and if it's a draw after 2 rounds, the judges will pick who they thought won overall.
Yeah.
Little pride rules mix there, I like. And then, of course, it'll be 3 rounds in the final.
So what do you think about this? Are they setting up a fight between Phil Davis and King Mo? Do you think that's what they're trying to get there?
Yeah, that's what I think. I think the pickup from Phil Davis is a great pickup. Phil Davis, to me, is still a fan favorite.
Yeah, he's a great fighter too. But he's going to have some trouble with Emmanuel Newton possibly.
Yeah,
Emmanuel Newton is no joke.
Yeah, former champ in Bellator for sure. He's beaten King Mo twice.
Yeah.
I think King Mo is going to be, I'm not saying he's done, but, he's going to have to really bring his A game. Maybe, he beats Linton Vassell, who's, he's a decent guy, but he's going to have to hope that Emmanuel Newton really takes it to Phil Davis. And one last thing happening there that night, the reason it's called Dynamite 1 is they're going to continue to have more Dynamite cards. And the Dynamite includes a Glory kickboxing ring. So there's going to be some kickboxing there. There's going to be 3 fights, and one's going to be with Paul Daly. So it's going to be a great night of fights.
News Corner.
So, Mike, what have you got for us in the way of news?
Yeah, Jay, about a month or 2 ago, maybe like about a month ago, after Big Nog lost to Stefan Struve, there was a lot of talk about he might retire. Dana White wanted him to retire. He wasn't sure. Well, now we have concrete, a decision by Big Nog. He has retired. That happened earlier this week. He's a legend, in my opinion. I did a really big article on him. I thought he deserved it, even though he didn't have his great years in the UFC. But let me just roll off really quick. 2000 Ring King of Kings tournament winner. He was the inaugural heavyweight champ in Pride back in 2001. He was our interim champ in 2003. He was the UFC interim champ in 2008. He's a Tough 8 coach and Tough Brazil 2 coach. So he's done so much in his career. And, he's fought them all. The best heavyweights in Pride.
Yep.
And he's fought some of the best heavyweights in the UFC. He's got career wins over guys like Randy Couture, Dan Henderson, Mirko Cro Cop, Mark Coleman, Jeremy Horn, Tim Sylvia, Josh Barnett, and even Fabricio Verdum, who has the belt currently. So big ups to Big Nog.
Yeah, definitely. And
what do you think?
Well, you know what, Mike? Now he starts the next chapter of his life, as they say.
Yes, he is going to be the UFC Brazil ambassador. I forgot to say that. So that's what he's doing now.
Yeah, I want to touch on this a little bit. With this retirement from Big Nog, there was a lot of speculation that I've read and everything. People saying things like, well, Dana White forced him out, basically forced him to retire like he did with Chuck Liddell and all that. And, there's a lot of hate always going to Dana White's way. But you know what? Dana White cares about these fighters. He sees when these fighters are done. And I just hate when I read things like that, people writing stuff like that, because, look, he made him the ambassador. He is an employee of the UFC still. He is still getting a check, guys, and he's not getting punched in the head. So, lay off the whole hate on Dana White all the time. The guy is not forcing this guy out because he doesn't think that he just can't fight anymore, or, he just doesn't have it anymore. He's forcing him out because he doesn't want him getting hurt. Okay?
With Chuck Liddell, it took a couple of fights for him saying, Chuck, you don't need to do this anymore. So obviously he allows fighters to fight as long as they want, but he's going to let you know you don't have to do it anymore. I mean, he could easily keep Big Nog on the payroll and just have him in Brazil shows and give him cans.
Yeah.
He's a draw still.
Yeah.
And that's something I hate as well, Jay, is that people will hate on Dana White on this, but we're all our own people. So if we get to say yes, no, if we're going to fight, if I'm a fighter, but he's going to let you know we don't need you. And then he gives you a job because he knows you're still worth something, not just for his company, but as an ambassador for the sport. Because so many guys, Jay, in other sports, they're done with football. They're done with baseball. If they don't open up like a rib shack, if they don't open up, a car wash place, or a dealership, they what happens? They just go off into obscurity.
Yeah.
This guy's going to be doing this probably for the rest of his life.
Yeah. So that's all I wanted to touch on. You can go on with the news.
Yeah, just, real quick, too, I wanted to say something that I wrote about on the Facebook site. I didn't talk about it here yet, but Big Nog was at my very first live UFC event. And I'll just do a quick summation of that because I already wrote about it. But I had never seen the man fight because I was behind the times with Pride. I was watching the DVDs. So I saw Big Nog fight Heath Herring, and Heath Herring just laid him out in the first round. And he didn't go out. And he came back and he won that fight in a dominating fashion. And to me, that's what his legacy is going to be. A guy that either finishes you or, he's going to take all you've got. Guys like Stefan Struve, they gave him all he could. Fedor Emelianenko could never finish Big Nog. And he did get finished later on in his UFC career, but that happens to all great fighters. When they get older, their body shuts down. So I just wanted to share that quick story.
Yeah, that's definitely, Mike. Anytime, man, you can share those stories. But I just hate hearing all that hate for Dana White all the time. Sometimes he actually does a lot of good. And this is a case that he's done some good. He's pulled a fighter out that definitely needs to retire. He's been hit a lot. And gave him a job. That's all. So go ahead.
Yeah, we got all kinds of official notifications of some fights coming up. It's just amazing. I mean, really, we've talked, Jay, already of some of them on Blab, and so we're going to talk about ones that we didn't even talk about Blab. And I mean, we've got Faber versus Frankie Sands at UFC 194. Uriah Faber, nobody wants to fight him, Jay, and at 135. And this Frankie Sands guy, I only know a little bit about him. He decided to take the fight, and good for him. Yeah, and I still think this is probably going to be a showcase fight for Uriah Faber, of course. He has slowed down a little bit, Jay, it seems like. His last fight against Francisco Rivera. I thought he might have been losing that fight before he got the win with the knockdown. But we'll see if he gets past Frankie Sands where he's at. Max Holloway versus Jeremy Stephens, also at 194. And guys, this 194 card, at the very end of our discussion with these fights, I'm going to roll out what the 194 card is completely. But Jay, Max Holloway, Jeremy Stephens, both these guys called out Frankie Edgar. And Frankie Edgar is now fighting Chad Mendez. So the UFC said, hey, why don't you guys fight? What do you think?
That's an amazing fight. I can't wait to see that. Unfortunately, Holloway didn't get to finish his last fight against Charles Oliveira, but he was looking to turn it on when Oliveira got hurt. Of course, the torn esophagus. Holloway just, to me, like I said before, he's an up-and-coming guy. He's going to be up there fighting amongst the best. He already is. And Jeremy Stephens is no slouch. Big-time veteran. He's been there for a while, but he's been doing good things lately, been winning fights, and this is going to be a war.
Yeah, both great strikers. I cannot wait for this. And, I'm assuming this is going to be on the main card, but as we talk about other fights, at some point, one of these 194 fights are going to have to be free on Fox Sports 1. There's just so many great ones. And one of those that might be on Fox Sports 1 is Damian Maia versus Gunnar Nelson. That's also at 194. And that's kind of the veteran submission ace versus the up-and-coming submission ace. Yeah. I cannot wait for that fight. Gunnar Nelson's basically undefeated, guys. He had a split decision loss to Rick Story, but a lot of us thought he won that fight. Mm-hmm. And, I cannot see what's going to happen with Damian Maia. He just pushed back Neil Magny in his last fight. That was supposed to be a good one. Dominated him. Is he going to dominate Gunnar Nelson, Jay? I don't know. My thing on this is that Gunnar Nelson is really good at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well.
Yeah, and he's the younger guy. Yes. I think he's the stronger guy as well. We'll see what happens with this. It's going to be a great fight, but 194, Mike, is just looking amazing. Amazing. I'm just so excited.
That's the last news I pretty much have for 194. So let me just give you the fights that have been released, at least the really good ones in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that is Aldo McGregor. I mean, you can stop Jay right there.
Yeah.
Would you pay $60 just to see those two guys fight?
Yes, definitely.
Yep, totally. And then we've got Weidman Rockhold, another title fight. I mean, it blows my mind. And of course, the closer we get to these fights, we'll start calling them. But Jacare versus Yoel Romero, that's completely a title eliminator, Jay, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely.
We talked about Faber and Sands. We talked about Holloway Stevens. Damian Maya Nelson we just talked about. The other one we didn't talk about, Jay. Of course, we talked about it on Blab as well. Guys, go to Blab. Jay talks about Blab a lot too. I mean, he's found a great site for us to really discuss with you guys fights. Watterson is fighting. Michelle Watterson is fighting Tisha Torres on that card as well.
The karate hottie.
Yes.
Yes.
So,
the karate hottie herself fighting
card.
Tisha Torres is an awesome fighter too. That's going to be a great one. I'm surprised they'd never met up in Invicta, and I told you that before too. I was surprised they'd never fought before, but they will be fighting on that card. That card is just fantastic. And I can't wait for it. But you know what? I wanted to touch on, you mentioned Conor McGregor. And also in the news, Conor McGregor has pissed off a lot of fighters. He's basically, it seems like he's pissed off the 155ers as well in a recent press conference. And if you guys haven't seen video of that, it's all over YouTube. Conor McGregor,
go big.
Yeah, he's definitely the biggest talker in the game now. He makes Chael Sonnen pale in comparison to him. Honestly, he's the biggest S talker in the game, so to speak. If you want to see a guy run his mouth, and you know what, like he says though, he backs it up. He has backed it up so far, so nobody can really say much. And you could see in the press conference, they can't really say much to the guy because he has backed it up.
And Jay, he's talking a lot of smack to Dos Anjos and to Cowboy Cerrone. They're going to fight, of course, coming up. I'm a big fan of Cowboy Cerrone. I don't know who wins that fight between Cowboy and Conor McGregor if they were to fight.
Well, here's the thing. I kind of do know. At least for me, in my opinion, I'm thinking Cowboy. I'm thinking Dos Anjos even beats him. I'm thinking these guys at 155 are just too big for him. That's the way I look at it right now. I think they're just too much for him.
Yeah, Conor's he's a big featherweight though. So, I'm Cowboy all day. I'm going to root for him. But, it's one of those things where I look at the size of McGregor and I say, maybe he could beat Cowboy. But I don't know for sure.
But he's a big 145er. Cowboy's dropping down from probably 185, 190 to 155. And you got McGregor dropping down from like 170 to 145. There's a difference there. So he's got to gain some muscle mass. He's got to get bigger, which in turn he'll get slower. He won't have that total speed advantage he says he has now. So, I don't see it yet. We'll see what happens when he fights Aldo. I still say he beats Aldo. Yeah,
I agree. Third round KO, in my opinion.
He claims he's going to be moving up in weight after he beats Aldo because he'd have already run through the 145 division. But I don't think that's going to happen. I disagree with it too. I think he should give Mendez a rematch and also fight Frankie Edgar. Yeah. I think that should happen too. That is if Frankie Edgar gets to that point, which I'm not saying he can't. He very rightly could. He's a great fighter, but I think he owes Mendez a rematch.
But I agree, and he hasn't even come clear to clearing out the division, in my opinion. You can't fight like 5 fights and become champ and then like move up.
But let me ask you something.
Yeah.
If he beats Mendez and Edgar, beats Mendez again and then beats Edgar, I think that if he moved up at that point, it's fine.
Yeah, I understand. I can understand that.
Yeah,
but
not right after he beats Aldo.
Yeah,
100%. We're in agreement with that. But that trash talk is pretty funny if you guys go watch it. One of my favorite lines is when he tells Dos Anjos, come fight the money fight. And once you do, you'll be so happy you'll tell your wife, honey, put on the red panties. We've made the big time or something like that. It's hilarious.
He said, go get a ring. He said, go get a ring, I guess, to give it to her, give her the ring, and then break out the red panties. So, he's a wealth of just amazing talk. Yeah, and like you said, Jay, he backs it up. We'll see what happens if he goes up to 155. And maybe we're wrong, Jay. Maybe he gets destroyed by Aldo. I don't think that's going to happen.
Maybe red panties are like a thing of celebration in Ireland that we're not aware of. But I just found it hilarious. It was so funny.
Yeah. Jay, we still have just really 2 other stories we could talk about that we haven't talked about already. Joanna Jędrzejczyk is now fighting Valerie Letourneau at UFC 193. She's going to be the co-main event. That's going to be the co-main event under the Holly Holm fight with Ronda Rousey. So no Claudia Gadelha. Sadly, we were wanting that fight, but Gadelha is still hurt.
I'm torn up.
Yeah,
I'm torn
give
up
me a
about
second
that.
just to get my thoughts on this.
Go ahead.
I wrote about it already, but Letourneau, she has 3 wins in a row, okay. But if you look at this, the people that could be fighting for the belt right now, you could have given, them Paige Van Zant if she won tonight, which she did. I'd like to have Van Zant, not fight, her quite yet, but that's a better fight. You've got Michelle Watt, the winner of Watterson and Tisha Torres. So, it just seems like a showcase fight for not Gadelia, for again Jacek, and it's just not the same type of fight. We went from this amazing, question answering fight to Mike Tyson 1988. You know what I mean?
Agreed, 100%. That's a good analogy. It is like Mike Tyson in the late 80s, when he was just dominating everybody. That's where Jacek is right now. And in my opinion, the only one that has even looked decent against her has been Gadelia. And now that she's out, it's very disappointing. It's so disappointing.
We talked about Mighty Mouse today at the beginning of the show, of course. Mighty Mouse, it's basically Mighty Mouse and Joseph Benavidez. And that's kind of how I look at Gadelia along with Jacek. I know they haven't fought each other twice yet, but it seems like they're just the top. Jay, like you've talked about, we've talked about, and we're going to see how long it takes for Jacek to get on a streak. But she certainly, for sure, could be one of those Mighty Mouse Johnson, could be a John Jones, can be what I think Chris Weidman's going to be, which is they're just going to destroy these people. So
and like you said, Gadelia versus Jacek 2 would have answered the question there: who really is the best fighter in that division? Because they are the top 2. Unfortunately, we're not going to get that answer just yet. We will, however, get that answer soon. I know we will. As soon as Gadelia is better, they will put that fight together. Because let's face it, Jacek's going to maul Letourneau. She's going to maul her.
Jay, there's just no one-punch power from Letourneau to have a shot.
Oh, definitely not. Jacek has it all. She's a well-rounded fighter who's amazing on her feet. Just the striking ability she has. She really does remind me of an old GSP, She's just an awesome fighter. So poor Letourneau.
Yeah, she's getting thrown to the wolves. We talked about Paige Van Zant. I think that Jacek is similar to Van Zant, where she's just a cutie too, but she's more of a killer in the cage. But outside of the cage, Jacek, if you've seen anything online from her at her house with her boyfriend and her pets, it's just amazing the way she can just go from this really nice young woman that you would see on the street, and then just like that, she's a killer in the cage. Yeah,
definitely. But, there's a big leap between Van Zant and Jacek. She's on a whole nother level, a few levels up from Van Zant. And I don't want to see Van Zant fight her yet. It's not going to be pretty if that happened. So let's give Van Zant some time. Let's give the rest of the strawweight division some time and let Gadelia fight. In my opinion, it should have just been postponed.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree.
That's the way I look at it. Should have been postponed. Let the other strawweights catch up. or catch their breath at least. Because
Jay, I don't know what the injury is, though. They've been kind of hush-hush on the injury, so it could be something longer we don't know. Because if Gadelia is out for like 4 or 5 months, I don't know if we want the champs waiting that long. But, maybe we would. It just depends.
I would. And I could say that because, come on, let's face it. Letourneau, why throw her to Jacek? And I know that they're trying to give her somebody. They don't have anybody, to give her right now outside of Gadelia.
Well, she's 3-0 in the UFC, and she's the Dan Hardy man. My Dan Hardy rule. The champ's got to fight someone. She's only got 2 defenses, but I could have went either way, man.
The UFC is doing the best that they can at this point with Letourneau, and I understand that she's 3-0 in the UFC. So I get it, but it's not right in my opinion. I think that it's just the difference in fighting ability between Letourneau and Jacek is it's going to be a mauling. It's going to be a mauling, Mike.
Well, let's switch gears then to something that won't be a mauling, I think, and that is the last thing I have for pretty much the news Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit is now the main event at 195.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. Since Robbie Lawler hurt his thumb, so they had to pull him out of 193. Then they brought over Holly Holm and Ronda Rousey to fill that main event. So now they're filling their main event. It's a lot of cross pollination going on with the cards.
Cross-pollination.
So it's just one of those things where like we had some letdowns of people getting hurt, but we're just switching. They're still the same people for the most part will still fight each other. They're just going to fight on different times.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. Lawler's completely good on January 2nd to fight on that card at 195, that's fine with me, and that's your birthday, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. And anybody wants to give me money to go see the fight, I'll gladly take it.
So I'm just looking forward to see Condit getting his title shot. And, against a guy like Lawler, which is come on, let's face it, Lawler's a beast now. It's going to be very hard. But at the same time, I will say that he's probably the best guy to go up against for Condit. I think if I were to choose anybody, else in the top three, I think Lawler's the guy that he could possibly beat the easiest right now.
Yeah. The closest other guy, in my opinion, may be Hendricks, but Hendricks' cardio has not been looking well lately. So, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So you know what? We might have a new champ. Who knows? I'm not saying it now, but who knows?
Yeah, I hope so. Both, we're both big Condit fans, and I think, he had the interim championship, but now, and like Jay, you brought up on another show before, he was probably the closest outside of the Johnny Hendricks fight for GSP, for beating GSP. I think Hendricks did beat GSP, but man, when Condit knocked GSP down, that could have been it. And I think
that head kick
with the Lawler fight, I think that will be it. I think he will land something.
If he lands a head kick, you know how the natural born killer does it. He rushes in there as soon as he hurts somebody. He's on top of it. GSP is just GSP. He's just a fantastic fighter, and he got his wits about him and came back.
Fighter of the month.
Now, Mike, let's get into our Fighter of the Month pick for August. I know it's now September, but we like to wait the full month before we give our Fighter of the Month pick. And I'll let you start. Who's your Fighter of the Month?
Jay, this was a tough one. Last month, I picked Chad Mendes. You picked Conor McGregor. And I think those are both really, good picks. This time, I almost went with Patrick Cote. But I went with Neil Magny. You might be thinking, well, why'd you go with Neil Magny? He was 1-1 this month. Well, I mean, he was dismantled by Damian Maia for sure, at UFC 191. But then he stepped in on short notice to fight, Eric Silva and beat him. So that's like 3 weeks notice basically. And the first fight was on the 1st of August. The second fight was August 23rd. So to him, that's a big deal for me for Fighter of the Month. Jay, what do you think? What's yours?
My Fighter of the Month, I'm going with something a little different this month. Not based on basically his performance in the ring, but although he did win his fight last month, it was at Bellator 141, and that would be Justin Wren. Now, Justin Wren had a 5-year hiatus. He's been gone. He's actually been, like we've mentioned before on the podcast, he's been helping pygmies in the Congo. Been building wells and stuff and helping them get fresh water. And that's the reason why I'm picking him, is that he's back as a fighter. He's helped these people. He's such an inspiration to everybody inside and outside of that cage. The guy is just an amazing person. And my Fighter of the Month has to go to him. He's just an amazing person. And he did win. He didn't look that great, guys. But you know what? Give him a pass. 5 years ring rust. That's a long time. So, Justin Wren, kudos to you, and you are my Fighter of the Month.
That's awesome, Jay. I think both of us did a really good job on that because, to be honest with you, there wasn't a lot of guys on streaks. There wasn't a lot of guys with super dominant wins. We could have went with Ronda Rousey, but that's kind of old hat. So, I guess my two picks have been a loser in their fight and a guy who went 1-1. So I guess I'm gonna have to pick a guy who has at least had a winning record next month. But we'll see.
Yeah, you know what? It's not just based on the winning record or a guy that's done something amazing in the ring or in the cage, I should say. But you know what? It's just based on the fighter themselves. Sometimes, and that's why I picked Justin Wren. And guys, if you guys want to tell us your Fighter of the Month for August, go ahead and write us at MMA Think Tank @gmail.com, or you can call us up on the podcast line at 925-237-1296. Let us know what you guys think. Go over to Facebook and check us out there on Facebook. Mike's always doing great things on Facebook, articles every day. He's updating that every day, and he just does an amazing job. You guys need to go over there and check that out. Also, I want to tell you guys about a new website at fight-tv.com. It's a place to find articles, betting picks for MMA and all combat sports. And it's just a great site if you're into that sort of stuff. And they've got a lot of articles and stuff there too. And our podcast is also there as well. So fight-tv.com. Mike, of course, they can find your Facebook at MMA Think Tank Podcast. If you guys type it into Google, it all our stuff pops up. Our YouTube, Facebook, Gmail, everything.
Yeah, Jay, and as of now, the Facebook is, it's current. It's talked about, everything leading up to the fights tonight. All the fights we just talked about here in the podcast. I've got articles on that. I might have sometimes I pick who I maybe think is going to win, but for the most part, I just write down what these guys are bringing to the fight, and of course, you make your own decision on that. So yeah, and tomorrow I'll be coming home from church and jumping right back on and putting stuff up for the aftermath of UFC 191.
Yeah, and I just want to say you do a fantastic job on that, Mike. Seriously, you do a great job on that site. I love the pictures that you pick to go along with your article. You do a great job with that. So kudos to you, man. Anyway, guys,
brother. It's my passion.
Yeah, definitely. It's our passion here.
Yeah,
mixed martial arts for sure. But guys, anyway, this is the end of the show. We will see you guys again in 2 weeks. We'll be back and we'll be talking fights then, probably talking about the Bellator fight. Yeah. Any other fights going on next week?
Jay, just what we covered. World Series of Fighting.
World Series of Fighting, that's right.
Yeah, that's on the 18th, which is a Friday. And then on the 19th, there is the Dynamite show, Bellator 142.
That's right. Yep.
And I'm sure we'll do the podcast then, and my guess is it'll be up on Sunday like you generally do such a fantastic job of getting it out. So.
Well, I appreciate that. And we will definitely be back and be talking about those fights as well as all upcoming fights and all the news that comes up in the coming weeks. So we will see you guys in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks a lot.
We go.